I've actually thought about it. I was like, no, I really should finally do one of these that it was good and serious. I really try to get nice and sober about this because one of the talks about Civil War that Tim Pool keeps bringing up, one of the problems is that there's absolutely no evidence, nothing, that says the left has legions, battalions, even squads. Yeah, and also there's the fundamental issue of what nobody wants to really discuss from the left, but that the right wing understands this and understands it very clearly. The right and the left have they're different personality types. There are people on the left who you would think you're like, why, like, why don't you understand these people don't have your interests at heart? Like, this is why, to a great extent, I kept saying, I'm like, I don't understand why so many black men kind of side with the political left when they culturally and the way black male culture is with its competitiveness and being more open about that covetousness is frowned upon to the point of violence and such like. So and then honor culture, key to this black American honor culture. That's not just an inherited thing from social things, and if everybody was taught to be little Nas X, they would all be good little bitches. No. Honor culture, like a lot of things personality-wise, we now know this is over 40% inherited. It's a genetic inheritance. You actually act like your family members. The Gen X has heard this. The baby boomers do know that that's true. They actually absolutely know this is true because every single television show during the 80s that had a family sitcom, one of the episodes is that the woman who is the funny mom says, "Oh my God, I sound just like my mother." This is one of the most common jokes in American television writing. Maybe it vanished after a certain period of time because with the baby boomers and their fixation on being forever young, hence they're like, this is why they like French cuisine. They like French cuisine not because French cuisine is just so amazing. Where's Frenchtown in America? There's Chinatown, there's Little Italy, it's all kinds of them. Where's Frenchtown? There isn't Frenchtown. No. Women started eating French cuisine because French women were beautiful and thin. I'm not kidding. It's the same thing with like sushi. Japanese women are thin. It must be something about the way they eat. So we had like sushi exploded. I remember when it happened. This is something that I started to think about when a long time ago. So I was like, yeah, the honor culture issue, that doesn't jive with the cultural left. And that and what was starting to happen with starting with the Tumblr period of time, it started to become more and more clear. Like, yeah, these are two things that don't go together. You can't have an honor culture that is wibbly wobbly on what is upright, good, or bad behavior. Honor culture, that's one of the key things about honor culture, is this idea of guarding your kith and kin from outsiders and their outsider ways. And people who don't like that, it's like, well, then move back to France. I don't know. Because in the States, that's a very normal way of thinking across a whole section of the country. Widespread. So something I started to consider, so that was one of my arguments for a while about, no, something's going to change in black American politics, and it's going to change to the right of center. And it's because people are not taking into account these are the hippies and ravies and black dudes are, these two are, they didn't jive before, they won't jive in the future. You know, I knew enough about 60s music to be like, they didn't jive. There was a handful of musicians that worked together. Some music projects, you know, these guys at some point had to pay their rent. So, you know, it's not the same culturally though. And once like you know enough about like some of the 60s and 70s, like the different militant movements, and you start seeing like, then especially liner notes telling you 20, 30 years in what would have been the music scene of a city. And so you just see, no, like, you know, psychedelia had its popularity, but in a very, very specific part of the country and spread in very specific ways in clusters. So it was like a college music thing that you really had to know your small radio stations back in those days to hear that, even though Black Merda is one of the most well-known like psychedelic like rarity bands. Yeah. So anyway, and then all the people, the spin-offs from the experience and stuff like that. This is not widespread though. You could even see musicians who went through their psychedelic phase, and then what do? They put on the leather vest. They take off their shirt and put on a leather vest and wear a natural, and it's the 70s, you know. And so as I would keep studying things about culture that your mama just doesn't tell you, your dad might tell you about this as you're looking at his record collection. I bet some of you are about to drop a comment right now. And so you learn about these things that it's like, well, of course us boys knew this. We were at these shows. Like that's what guys do. This changed, you know, over time, mostly during my lifetime, that everybody was at the marquee overflow. By the way, I'll find a way to be there waiting for. So, that period of time that we want, that now the left is trying to claim various ways of rewriting what the 60s through the 90s were. Long had been. This is now people have been figuring this out, and the big one is the manosphere. They're the ones who suddenly started exchanging stories. And so you start hearing now stories of subcultures of men that are critical to know, to understand, like, that's why very few people know much about the history of California gangs until an OG sits down and tells you about it. And they tell you from their point of view, but then what they hear from all the other guys, right? But nobody had written books about a lot of this until relatively recently, you know, until about the 2000s. And now you have YouTube where these guys can tell you about all these things. It just the way people dressed, the little things. Like you wear this for this, you wear this for this, and that's when you're looking for trouble. And you know, or you're walking through other people's territory, you do this so that everybody knows you're not there for a fight. That kind of subculture, I started to realize something about the left. With all this talk of civil war, most of this doesn't mean anything to them. And it can't, because it's about the boys. And so it must be considered sort of, at best, disordered behavior. The kind of thing women would never do. Good girls are good, and they would never do things like that. You know, boys are yucky poo-poo, and that's why they do things like that, because they're taught to hate. You're taught hatred from the Bible. So I started to really get the left doesn't understand a lick about the right or the new right. Even Hassan, Destiny, Vaush, you guys always have to misrepresent what the new right really is like. Like, we know you have to be floating around in people's discords, and you see how normal people are. How it's just kind of a lot of normal talk, but a lot of it's just articles. People just dropping articles, and that's it. And like, you're thinking there's trying to get people to think, oh my God, they're gonna, and it's like, you're not that important to them. Why do you think you're important in some kind of great strategy? Oh, and then we're going to get these people, and then we're going to get these people, and then we'll rule the world. It's, why do you think people want to do that? And it's really one of these things of not Nick fucking Fuentes. Stop with fucking Nick fucking. Does Dan Bongino want to rule the world? Do you really think that Dan Crenshaw wants to be like Viceroy of Michigan or something? or Steven Crowder wants to be like, Duke of some county in Texas. And it's like, you guys know how this works. The revolution never stops. The revolution never stops. That's everybody on the left understands that. From your own writings, your own writings of your own thinkers. The revolution never stops. It just changes its form. And so you guys are it's this constant idea of that there has to constantly be this revolution to change the fundamental nature of society. Which then that gets real weird, because you really kind of have to wonder then, well, what do you guys really think society is then? I mean, like, what legitimately, because if people are good and you just have to get them to be naturally altruistic, which is the idea with most of the thinking on the left, and that something about this thing called society perverts that. Well, what do you then mean by society? Because this is the thing. Brothers like making money. Did my mama not teach me something correctly? And really this was something after a while, I'm like, how don't you understand what rap music is saying? Black people understand money's good. Having it is better. And it's just then hilarious the way then Hassan acts. At least with Destiny, he can be somewhat legit about, no, he just wants one of the most ultimate of failure, pre-Sovietization, a mighty worthless welfare state. So it just literally constantly exacerbates, feeding the cancer-ridden diabetic nothing but soda pop. And he just will never admit that almost everybody who lived in such systems, and now they're no longer like these mighty welfare states, that they're like, oh yeah, that's just how you got everybody to just sit around and drink vodka and smoke cigarettes. That's it. It made it worthless to work. Because you didn't have an incentive. You could just get vodka and cigarettes and just sit around. And they just won't deal with that. They just won't deal with people. Will admit that. They'll talk about how it just sapped the soul out of whole groups of people. So, and it was forced diversity too. If you actually look up within the confines of Russia, or actually, the Soviet Union, the entire Soviet Union, the way they would move people around. And so you'd have these giant housing blocks and with people from all over a stretch of land that America can fit into, like 5-6 times the 48 contiguous states. And so it all had been tried. Like, anybody saying, no, that's all been tried before, they're correct. There's nothing that the left can argue anymore about that. There's nothing new. These aren't really good ideas. It's just that they have to hide when they failed. They rewrite the history of what happened. And so that's why, like, there's so many people who, somebody like Johnny Rotten, it's not just that he likes that Trump says wild and crazy things or he's insulting or something like that. No, Johnny Rotten was there to see the 1975 garbage strike. So he would have seen when East London was this sort of up-and-coming working class area that was starting to have like sort of this boom they had become a hub of music, and they were starting to become this area that was like they had the look, and so what was it, Cockney Rejects put it, the only place left where anyone is alive, the East End. And so in the famous song East End, well, so Johnny Rotten would have seen the garbage strike. And the garbage strike I think it lasted for multiple years, possibly, and shaped the entire punk genre from the sound to the ethos, to even the look. There's actually things about some of the style of dress that has specifically to do with the garbage strike of 75, and so that's when you get 77 punk. 1977 is kind of loosely where people say but they call it 77 punk. So that whole thing, without having any of that context, which is kind of a man subculture thing to know. I mean, the way I know about it is looking into the history of the Clash, or not the Clash. Yeah, the Clash. And so, without knowing that, you wouldn't know. Like, no, you can very quickly shape a youth movement with the wrong inputs, not the right ones, the wrong inputs. Because I got to see hip hop come into existence as well. That was my time, and I got to see like that when this guy Cool G Rap was one of an act like no other at the time. Nobody was like that. And then shortly thereafter, NWA came out, and there was the 88 to 89 explosion of albums that are some of the most popular albums for the next 30 years. So, and I mean, to this day, there's the albums of that period of time were just humongous, shaped whole subcultures. There is no civil war on the coming from the left because they don't really have anything to defend. They no longer have this idea of a long family legacy, a genetic legacy. They're not defending their mothers from anything. Nobody's going to come to the areas. There's not going to be a need for this. See, and the revolution has no history of this. There is no history of the revolution making the farmers actually really come up with true, we're going to invade the cities. It's just, and I mean, maybe somebody show me an example, and I'm betting at some point I will find, no, this was a very small number of people who organized a very, very well-organized group. The people had some ability to do such a thing as they did, and these were not farmers. This is not farmers. The French Revolution's like that as well. That it was, the cities went outward and purged the farmers. Even now, Democrats, the progressives, the left, they talk about people in rural areas like they're these people who are the real threat, and the real threat to this thing called democracy and this thing called progress, when what it is there's a bunch of people who live in the city who are rootless and deracinated and decultured, And so now they have to make everybody else like that because they feel threatened by people who seem to have something that they don't really have, that they cannot describe. Key to it, they can't describe it. They can't say culture because culture is the acolyte. Culture is Disney. Culture is lesbian headlamp. Culture is a rain is the rainbow flag painted on a street. That's real culture, not your music, not your history, not you understanding who your people are as opposed to you should be loving. Don't do anything to that rainbow flag on the don't even walk on it. Don't even look at it. Don't sully it. That's a real people. Your people don't matter. Who you are, that doesn't matter. In fact, actually, we'll start figuring out ways of sort of de-writing you. See, oh yeah, like we did with the white men. They're not Irish. They're not Italians. They weren't Dutchmen. They weren't settlers. They weren't German. No, they're just white man. They get to write them out of history, right? They weren't important. What are these compasses, shipping, Maersk, whatever. Wells Fargo, fuck that. It's all created by black women. And so after a while, it's you guys, you don't have, what songs do you sing? When your men march, what songs do they sing? When you have patches, when you make patches, what sets of symbols are you going to draw on? What, ancient pagan symbols? Ooh, see, we have like special Wiccan brigade. I'm a sorcerer. Sorceress, actually. I'm a sorceress with a cock. That's why I have all these special pins so that you know. This one means still has cock. Oh my god. Oh, it's so wonderfully hot as fuck out here. Oh, it's like 90-some degrees. Nobody's out here. Nobody wants to be out in this. It's like some skaters are hiding in a shadow. Every once in a while you'll see like some people who you can tell they're from someplace sunny. Motherfuckers are hella tan already. You're just walking around. Like, oh, you're probably from California or Texas or something. Moved up here. Trying to move away from the Reds, from those Republicans. Because, they're going to do something to you. Because that's, everybody knows, when Trump got arrested, when things happened to Trump, when things happened to Giuliani, remember how the Republicans went totally crazy and destroyed everything, or that time, that senator, got shot at the baseball game, remember how the Republicans just, they swept in from everywhere. They came into all the cities and stole all the fucking shoes and burned down all the Apple stores. Remember that? Remember how that happened? Or remember that time that oh yeah, when they lost the election and you have these people show up and they get rowdy and then they slowly walk around and go, look at that painting of that, look at that thing over there, look at that. I'm gonna take a few photos of myself in front of shit. Let me take a photo with this cop in front of some shit. Prove I was here. Light it on fire? No, that's somebody else's shit. That's important shit. What are you talking about? What are you, crazy? Remember that? Remember all those, how they lined all the cops up and showered them with fire extinguishers, and then when they were out of fire extinguisher stuff, they clobbered them into bloody pulps. with the fire extinguishers. Remember how that happened? Things like that, what the Republican people do. Remember when they did that? Well, I mean, when are they not burning down synagogues, right? Just going crazy, burning all the synagogues, right? They do that, right? They hate the Chinese so much. When they ship Apple products over here, they steal them. That's what it is. That's what it is. All those Republicans stealing all those fucking Apple products. So there's not going to be some big civil war thing because the left can't really do it. There's certain logistics issues of just being able to conjure up the people. There's the left are they'll never go for anything like a draft, and they'll never join in with something like a militia. The right would understand the idea of a civil militia and stuff like that, where it's kind of like going camping and target shooting, and probably some other tactics drills and things like that. But most military stuff comes down to raw logistics. Like EVE Online shows that every major group of players who does any fighting is always looking for logistics players, because Logi, the healer, is you have to have them. You have to have somebody who could supply, whose ship can carry extra ammo, things like that. That you have to have people who can carry ammo. And the left is not breeding people to carry ammo. I'm sorry. Even the idea of you just carry this fucking ammunition, that's not going to happen. You said the F word. How dare you speak to me this way? So there's no civil war. No. The problem now really that a lot of people like Hassan, Destiny, Vaush, people like this, is they're going to become like almost like this bellwether, they're this weather vane when the liberals cry. So what really, I actually, as a nationalist, as somebody who's right of center, I worry about the joy people will take when the liberals cry, because this could get really bad. It is really something that I've sat back and I'm like, I think you guys don't really get what you're setting up, because of this idea of you've played this idea that you guys are kind of a villain that you have to watch out for physically. That's not a good character to play unless you have logistics, which is backup. For physical violence, you need backup, and so when you make yourself, we'll show up in masks and we'll do something to your town, one of these days, you farmers. Well, there's a problem with this, is at some point, well, what if the farmers decide to take you up on that? What if they say, you guys keep showing up and messing with us? Well, obviously, somebody should finish this conflict. You don't have a problem, you just haven't made a decision. And you guys have decided and failed. You missed. So this is not a good place to be in history. And my whole mentality about it is, I'm like, this is gonna get fucked up. Like, when there's going to be people who, this is gonna be their entire youth. And when they come out of all this, they're going to choose one side or the other they want to make cry. And it's looking like the trend is saying make the left cry. So if that's the case, if that becomes like a real kind of mentality of people, this is pretty worrisome. It's not a good thing. And this is why male subculture a lot of the time exists so that also groups that would, because men fight. So sometimes subcultures will develop in a way that there's people who are that in-betweener, that they can go in between people and make peace. And it just, yeah. You know some vigilante heads and you know some real Pinoy brothers. And you're hearing about this beef that's going on, blah, 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 and it might light off at this or that event or something. And so you try to keep it cool because you don't want people at the event to get hurt. But you're also trying to not like really kind of give up, what people, yeah, you're not trying to give up what because you got to have honor. It's not a fun game to play. It's not a game. It's real life. Talk to you guys later.